Hey, what's going on, guys? It's been another week. Another unarmed black man was unjustly shot by police in this racist, white supremacist country we live in. What's his name? Say his name. You have to remember his name. His name is Rayshard Brooks. And none of what I just said was true. But that's what you're going to hear from the media. What a surprise, right? I'm sure that's just a giant coincidence that as they want the riots of the George Floyd aftermath to keep going, they're going to find each and every single time a black person is shot by police and frame it as unjust, even though it's not, to try to flame racial tensions. And they succeeded in just doing that because people are simple-minded twats who believe in tribe mentality and white guilt, and they have the bigotry of low expectations. All of these things come together for various groups for... Let's go into it. Let's go into the story. I'm sure you've heard of it already. I mean, I don't have to explain to it. But maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't heard of what actually happened. Maybe you haven't seen the police footage for yourself. Because if you actually saw the police footage for yourself, you would know that the mainstream media's opinions of an unarmed black man was shot in the back by police. There are a bunch of lies and half-truths in that. Rayshard Brooks was drunk, drove to some restaurant, some fast food restaurant, was in the drive-thru, passed out because he was drunk and tired. He was blocking the drive-thru, so police were called. People were like, what the fuck, it's the cars, and we can't do anything, the car's in the way. Police were called, they talked to them, did a field sobriety test, determined he was drunk, and proceeded to arrest him to bring him into charge of DUI. Completely normal thing. How else do you want this country to function? Do you want there to be no such thing as DUIs and people can just drive as drunk as they want, and it doesn't matter how many innocent people they kill or themselves? It just doesn't matter. I mean, like, do you want it to be like a civil fine, like just a slap on the wrist? Like DUIs aren't already treated lightly enough as it is. You know, you hear people having like 1, 2, 3, 4 plus DUI charges, and like, why aren't the punishments more severe? Why aren't they in jail for like 5 fucking years? Because obviously after the second or third time, they're just not getting it. I'll chalk the first one up. The first one you have should be a relatively light sentence, because sometimes you can have a beer and a half, and that's just enough to point you at 0.09, and so you shouldn't be faulted that much for something like that. But if that happens to you, you better be very fucking careful the rest of your life after that. So why are we letting these people off with a slap on the wrist after 2 or 3 times? That's beside the point. People complain about this. Where do you want something to be different? Do you want to be like in the last video I talked about, where like a community organizer, like a little faggot, comes up? It's like, hey, I heard you're having a tough time. You're like drunk. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to figure out what's going on? And they arrive in 5 minutes, by the way. And an hour later, they have a treatment plan for how to cure their alcoholism. Like, do you live in fairy tale land? Like, do you want no punishments for these things? Do you believe people are like, oh yeah, I talked with this person for an hour, and yeah, I saw the error in my ways. I'm just not gonna drink again. And I have a test. I have a program that's I'm gonna follow, so I don't do this again. You think everyone's just gonna do that? Just you don't think people are like too fucking retarded and they need like harsh punishment to be seeing the error of their ways, driving drunk, potentially killing? I can't, like, 40,000 people die in car accidents every single year in this country. I know not all of them are DUIs, but a good chunk of them are. Like, are we just gonna accept the fact that thousands and thousands of people are gonna die because of fucking retards? That's beside the point. So they do a normal thing. They do a field sobriety test, he's drunk, take him in for a DUI. The minute they put the cuffs on him, he starts wrestling with them. There's 2 police officers wrestling with him. They fight for a while. He knocks the taser out of one hand, he grabs the other and then runs, and then turns around and shoots them with the taser, and then, you know, after he shoots it, he turns around and keep running, and then they shoot him in the back. Technically, it is true that they shot him in the back, only because he just shot a taser at them. Like, he's not going to continue to run backwards for seconds on end so they can shoot him and he'd be justified to shoot him in the front. Like, when you're running, you turn, you shoot, and then you turn around and keep running so you don't trip or run into something. Duh. So they act like this poor innocent man who was just down on his luck, who's trying to turn his life around. You know, again, I have to put like a disclaimer every single, like, you know I hate the police, right? You know I believe that you have the right to break unjust rules, laws that like go against the Constitution. Like, you have the right to use force against police to defend yourself or defend your rights. Completely. At the same time, I acknowledge that if you are a drunk fucking retard who grabs an officer's taser and then shoots it at them, they're gonna fucking shoot you. And they're totally justified. That would be like if someone was shooting at police officers for trying to take away their guns and the police shoot back. I'm not going to get mad at the police officers for shooting back. What do you expect them to fucking do? Ideally, yeah, I would want them to not enforce unconstitutional laws, but that's beside the point. I'm going to get mad at the laws, not the police officers for shooting. Like, if you're getting shot at, you're gonna shoot back. It's like in wartime and we're shooting at the Taliban. The Taliban shoot back. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they shot at us. Why would they shoot us? Because we're shooting at them. They're the bad guys. Yeah, but they're gonna... Why you act surprised when they shoot back? Like, come on, this is so easy. So any objective person could see this is a justified shooting. He resisted arrest violently, wrestled with cops for several seconds, and then took their taser and ran with it and then shot it at them. I think liberals just... Any objective person would say, yep, he deserved to die. He was asking for it. He attacked these officers. Can police officers not defend themselves now? But in this current climate, we are truly living in clown world where we expect police officers to not be able to defend themselves because police brutality, and they're the enemy, so they can't defend themselves. And black people can literally do whatever they want in any circumstances, and it's still bad. We're still going to call it bad, but we'll just chalk it up to slavery because they're hurting so much. They're aching. Their communities are in danger. They feel scared. So they're just going to lash out and attack police officers and attack random white people in the streets. Oh, and burn random businesses to the ground that have nothing to do with anything for that matter. And we're supposed to just let this happen. We're just supposed to say, yep, that's just the country we live in. That's just the price we pay for living in America, is that we just have 13% of the population who's going to lash out violently, even when they're clearly in the wrong. But they subscribe to tribe mentality over looking at something objectively, and they're like, black person, boom, we're gonna defend him. Nope, he's our guy, he's our team, we're gonna defend him no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the situation, boom. No, we have to defend him every single time. Only against white police officers, though. When a black police officer attacks a black person and or kills them, they're silent, because they're both on the same team. He's a police officer, he's still a pig, he's still a race traitor, but he's still black. His skin trumps everything. Every other situational thing about a scenario or any other facts on the ground when it comes to talking about a scenario, race trumps all of that. So they won't say anything when a police officer kills a black man unjustly or justly. They won't say anything when a black person kills black people, which they do by the truckload every single fucking week, like thousands and thousands every single year. Eons more than white people kill blacks. You know what kills me is that Vincent James said it best from the Red Elephants in one of his previous videos. He's like, why are we allowing the population that commits the most amount of interracial violence, the most amount of violent crime in general, the most amount of murders, the most of everything, every single bad crime you can think of, they do the most, eons more than any other population demographic, even though they are not the biggest demographic. Why are we allowing them to do all of that and still claim to be the victim? They are not the victim in this situation. They are the aggressors, they are the perpetrators, they are the abusers. They are the one taking advantage of white, liberal, white guilt, and just want to pump them for everything they've got when it comes to money and sympathy and cover for them to do whatever they want. That's why they ask for like reparations. They want more money for nothing, so they can just spend it on whatever the fuck they want to. And they want to get rid of the police because they want to be accountable for their actions. So they literally want to do whatever they want with no consequences for any of their actions. They want all the money so they can do whatever they want. They don't want the police telling them they have to follow any law. You want to kill someone? Great. Steal their stuff? Fine. More stuff for you. You want to burn business to the ground? Fine. You want to sell drugs? You want to have a prostitute? You want to kidnap people? Whatever. Just whatever. And here's all this money to buy guns and ammo and, rent free. We're going to give you lots of free housing. We're going to give you money for cars. You can go around, drive, and steal things and shoot. You can drive-by shootings, whatever. That's what they want. That's literally what they want. You think that's an exaggeration? Every time these black people cry about stuff, okay, well, what can we do? They're like, money and no police. That's what they want every single time. How many times have you heard more money into black communities? What does that mean? Give me money. I'm part of the black community because I'm black. Give me money. That's what they want. Why are we allowing the aggressor, the perpetrators, and the abusers in these situations to demand more money and less accountability from white people who do the least out of all of those things? people think like white people abuse black people on a constant basis, can keep them down and shove their head in the mud and keep them from succeeding in this country. It's like, we're not the aggressors. You are the ones that are killing us at an astronomically more higher rate than we are killing of you. You kill more other black people than if we had like 10 times the amount of white people in America. You would still kill more, and you are 13% of the population. And really, it's mostly African-American males who commit almost all these murders. So really, we're talking about like 6.5%. You know, black women kill some, but mostly it's men. So really, if we get right down to it, it's more along the lines of 6.5% of the population commits over half of every single violent crime category you have on the books. Every single one. And we're supposed to just sit back and take it and just say, yep, they're allowed to do this because of slavery, because of redlining, because of Jim Crow, because of the hurt they've been experiencing for hundreds of years. Yet they're just no accountability. We're not going to treat them like adults, like responsible, functioning adults who can think for themselves instead of having a hive mind mentality when it comes to tribalism. And instead of that, no, we're just going to let them do all these things. White liberals think so little of black people. They think they are like violent children that should just be able to vent out all of this anger. But they're not venting their anger at the people who's killing them. If black communities rose up against the thugs and crime lords that were tormenting them so much by killing them by the truckload every week, then I would completely and 100% support that. That would be the move. That would be unleashing your anger correctly at the people who are making your life a living hell. But they're not. They're taking out on innocent white people who are doing nothing to them. They're taking out on businesses who, God forbid, sell stuff in their neighborhoods. And they wonder why people don't want to open businesses in black neighborhoods, and there's not a lot of shops in black neighborhoods, and you have to travel far to get, you know, basic supplies. And there's low unemployment. Not low employment, there's high unemployment because there's no jobs around there. You know, a lot of people don't have a lot of cars, no bus system to get you to where the shops are. You wonder the fuck why. Like, are we just supposed to pretend that companies are like, yep, it's a high risk to open a store here, but we can't be racist, so we're going to do it anyway, and our employees have a high chance of being beaten up and robbed, and there's a slight chance that if a black person does anything wrong whatsoever and attacks cops and is killed, then our stores get looted and burned to the ground for something we have no control over. And we're supposed to accept that. We're supposed to, yep, that's just part of America. They're just going to be these stores and these high-risk places, and you just have to put up with it. Otherwise, you're racist. And you understand systemic oppression. And you understand that we live in a white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And you understand how slavery can affect generations later who never experienced it, or nor even talked to anyone who ever experienced slavery. You don't understand these things unless you allow for these ridiculous, clown world, hyperbolic, ludicrous things to exist in this country and to happen at the same time you sit here like, yeah, it's fine. We're supposed to just let violent mobs destroy monuments and statues and memorials and whatever they feel like from our history because of slavery. And it's not like countries have ever written or put up monuments or memorials or anything about their enemies or rebel groups in the past. Like, oh, that's never happened. Like, countries don't do that. Yeah, they do all the time. It's part of their history. The Civil War will always be a part of our history. There's a reason why Confederate generals' tactics are still studied in military academies to this day, because they were that fucking good. They were some of the best generals to ever walk the face of the earth. They were so freaking smart when it came to their tactics, and really that's the reason why they lasted so long in the first place, even though the Union had way more industry and way more men and way more weapons, way more food. The Confederacy, the reason why they fought so well and lasted so long, it was because of their brilliant generals. Now, is that to excuse what they were fighting for? No. Is it going to excuse that they wanted slaves, that they stood for slavery? No. Why can't you admire your enemies being a worthy opponent while still disagreeing with everything they stand for? Like, can you acknowledge that the thing that people do that? Men used to do that. Men don't do that now, but throughout most of human history, men have admired their opponents' determination and skill in battle and their tactics, whatever. There's a reason why in the book We Were Soldiers, in the foreword of the book, that the writer says this is not only for the US soldiers that died during that war, but also the Viet Cong soldiers who we fought. Like, you were a worthy opponent. Even though, of course, he doesn't agree with communism, he doesn't agree with the regime, he doesn't agree with the torture and the oppression that the North Viet Cong did on everyone, he still respected them as worthy adversaries because they had no bombers, they had no artillery, they had no helicopters, and they still fought tooth and fucking nail against him and his soldiers. They showed bravery in the battlefield. They were just so determined to fucking win that actually, yeah, they did win. We lost the Vietnam War. That's how determined they were. Despite having less money, guns, everything I just mentioned in terms of heavy support of infantry, basically almost all they had was just infantry, and they still went toe-to-toe with the most powerful military on the planet. So does that mean the guy who wrote We Were Soldiers is a traitor and he's acknowledging losers? Actually, he's a loser. We lost that one. But, like, you get the sentiment. Like, you can respect that they were brilliant generals and good soldiers while still disagreeing with what they stood for and why they were fighting in the first place. I guess it's a higher level brain, it's a pro-gamer move that people just don't understand anymore. Lots of Confederate soldiers and generals didn't even agree with slavery and didn't even agree with what they were fighting for. They were called up by their state to fight for their state, for their community, for their town, for their family, and they went and did it anyway. Probably be called a pro-Confederate racist for all that, just by acknowledging simple facts, like there's a reason why we still study their tactics in US military academies to this day, because they were that fucking good, and that was like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. That's not just a coincidence that we don't just do it for shits and giggles. Back to the point of erasing our history, why do we just sit here and like, yeah, our history is going to be destroyed and rewritten and forgotten, and it's not even about the Confederate statues and monuments. It's the ones about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Christopher Columbus, and all of these other American heroes that weren't Confederates, that are still under attack. Their statues and monuments. Why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing a violent, small segment, extremely violent, extremely radical segment of population to destroy the people who founded this country, while propping up drug dealers, murderers, and rapists as victims of this supposed police brutality state we live in? Why do we demand that we get rid of all statues and monuments towards anyone who had slaves, regardless of the fact that, one, they did much good for the founding of this country, that cannot be put into words, that's how important they were, and two, everyone on the face of the planet owned slaves back then. You cannot take today's morals and values and judgments and go back in time and judge people because they couldn't have known any better. Because everyone did it. Why don't we demand that African countries get rid of all of their statues and monuments towards all of their great warlords and empires and emperors and kings who had slaves? Why are they allowed to celebrate their history even though their heroes and their founders of their countries had slaves? And a lot of them still have slaves to this day, which people just completely forget that white people were the first people to abolish slavery, and the only places that slavery is still in existence is in non-white places, specifically Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. But apparently we're the racist ones, and slavery is just a white thing. It's just we invented it. Did you know that there were no slaves before white people? Why are African warlords from the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, why are they allowed to have their monuments and their statues of all their great warlords and kings who founded their countries and did all these wonderful things for their people, but at the same time still own slaves? Why are we demanding, why only are white countries held to this standards of getting rid of the history of slavery, while non-whites are just exempt from it? It's just no big deal, even though you still own slaves to this day. It's okay. Yeah, there was no coherency to any of this. There wasn't really a point. There wasn't really what was his name? I can't even pronounce his stupid name. The guy who got shot in Atlanta? Rayshard Brooks. That was just a catalyst for all this, about how it's just the latest thing. It's going to keep happening. Blacks are still going to keep doing this stuff. They've been doing this stuff for decades and decades and decades, and they will continue to do this. So, are we just supposed to put up with it? That's not going to change. Unless we want police officers to not be able to defend themselves, or, yeah, if you want the police officers to not have any money and there's no police, then good luck, inner cities of like Detroit and Baltimore and Los Angeles. in Dallas and New York. Just, yeah, have no cops. And let your community leaders try to figure out how to deal with thousands and thousands of armed thugs who want nothing better to do than to shoot you and steal your stuff. And then maybe you're like, wow, maybe we do need police officers. We need to reform them. Obviously, there's huge problems with the police in this country. But yeah, we still need them. Like, as an entity, as an idea, we still need them a lot. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what they need for blacks to finally stop doing this shit. Once they realize that, yeah, police are actually net benefit. There's cons to them. Obviously, they're not perfect. I will critique many of things I mentioned in the previous video that they do, taking away our rights, asset forfeiture, qualified immunity, whatever. I'll talk about it any time of day. I am firmly for bashing the police any time of day. Doesn't mean I don't think they should exist. And maybe that's what it's going to take for black people to realize, hey, maybe we should teach our kids not just to get violent every single time you get arrested for something when we clearly fucking did it, and take account for your actions and say, yep, I did it, I fucked up. Instead of just being a little child and like trying to just run away violently. Maybe that's what it'll take. I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm just glad I live out in the country and have a fuck ton of ammo. That's all. That's what I'm happy about, listening to all this shit.